Welcome.
Oh, sorry, I was getting into it. Tom, I think your sound's off. There it is.
How about now? I got a new cord
Now,
and everything.
oh
Um,
man.
I think the music like blew my microphone out for a minute. So, all
Hey,
right.
I like our new intro, man. It like gets me going.
Yeah, we just need to fade it. It just ends very abruptly. We need to kind of
Yeah,
fade it in or
we're,
something.
we're
We'll
working
get
on
there.
it.
Yeah, but
We'll
anyway,
get it.
yes. So, hey, welcome to episode number 130. Brandon, like your new studio there. I like the animation behind you with the cars.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the Jeep Studio. It's a
that's
great
right.
backdrop.
That's right. And Tim FitzGerald is with us today. Tim, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad you could be here. So we're going to talk about a topic today that I don't know that we've talked a lot about, which is, we talk a lot about sales in general, and certainly with Carson being an enterprise Microsoft salesperson in a large company. But we're going to talk about something a little bit today, which is sales in the sort of early stage companies and
Mhm.
where founders a lot of times are making those early sales, and how do
Yeah.
we actually evolve that, and how do we take advantage of some strategies to actually grow an early stage company, which is certainly near and dear, I think, Brandon, to both of our hearts, right? So
I've got the war runes to prove it.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Hey, Tom,
So
can I jump in real quick before you introduce Tim and say welcome to Bob Britton? Thank you for being with us, and let remind everybody if you're watching live on LinkedIn or YouTube and you comment, we might be able to see it. Generally, we see it. If you have a question, pop it in the comments, and we can bring it on screen and answer it, and let Tim answer your questions. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We would be very grateful if you like what you hear. We'd appreciate the review, and if you think it's good for somebody, screen capture it, send it to them, share the episode. We would really appreciate that as well. All
for
right, Tom,
sure.
back to you. Lead
Well,
us on.
and one more thing, Brandon. Who is our sponsor this week?
Yeah.
Could it?
Hey, you know what? Our
Hey, look
our
at that.
our sponsor is this company called Fist Bump that I happen to be the founder of, and the great team behind us that is managing, producing, creating a bunch of content. Tom, after every episode that we do, every 35 to 45-minute episode, my team takes the videos, they take the transcripts, and they create over 20 pieces of content. They turn it into blog articles, they turn it into newsletters, they turn it into email campaigns. And one of the really cool things about it, and it's one of the reasons we have Tim here today, we talk about founder-led content or leader-led content, which is what we do. You can't replace the founder's voice. You can't replace the founder's experience. There's a disconnect when you have marketing content versus the founder created marketing content. And that's what Fist Bump does. So if you need help with that, or you want to talk a little bit about helping with founder-led or leader-led content, then we would love to talk to you.
Sounds good. Well, Tim, welcome again. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll kind of jump in on, what are some strategies that people can employ.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm based in Atlanta. I've been in the software industry for 40 years, 35 in enterprise software sales, and 15 years in management. And I have been really looking towards the end of my career to look at helping other companies in kind of in a give back mode. And so this is where fractional CRO came into play for me. And I focus on working with organizations that are in the post-seed Series A, maybe into a Series B, where the sales is run by the CEO or the founder, and they need a break. They need to spend more time on doing the things that a CEO and a founder needs to do, and not only on sales. So that's when I step in and I can help them with putting structure in place and helping him get what he needs out of a sales organization.
Yeah, and to add a little to that, for a lot of people are listening may not know sort of the tech world of how a lot of these are done, but correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, is if a startup with a technology product, technology offering, maybe they've raised a $500,000, $1 million, maybe even a bit more or a bit less, right? They've gotten that product to market, they've made a handful of sales. That's kind of the place where you kind of come into the equation. Is that the accurate place?
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Seed is usually they have a good idea and somebody gives them some money to build it. Then they get a couple of early customers, and then they can go get some more money and build out their team and build more product. So I'm in the point where they've proven that they have a product that someone wants to buy, and now they're looking to try to expand on that by adding more functional players on their team in sales, marketing, and customer success.
So when you walk in the door for the first time, so like we just talked about, what problems and challenges are you seeing? Like, what are the most common
Can
things?
can I can I jump
Yeah,
in as you ask that question real quick, Tom? Because the other thing I like about what Tim does, and it is at a startup level, and it's with founders, but really with how quickly, I mean, I think this to be true. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. With how quickly so many things are changing, how many industries are changing and buyers are changing. What Tim's going to talk about today, I think, is applicable for not just startups, right? Change is happening so much that your go to market motions are changing quickly, and how you're talking to your customers is changing quickly. And even your product market fit is probably changing, whether it's from competition or messaging or other things. So don't tune out if you're like, oh, I'm not a startup person. I think this is totally relevant to all companies.
I think that's a great point because not only do you have larger companies that maybe have to reboot on some of the things that they're doing, but let's face it, new companies release new products, new offerings.
Mhm.
They try to go into new markets. They try and expand all the time, even though they're maybe under a big name. They're still going through a lot of the same challenges,
Yeah,
regardless of the dollars behind them. So I think it's a great point.
cool. Now ask your question. Sorry, guys.
No, so Tim, what do you run into? Like, what is it that you run into when you walk in the door for that first time into these companies?
Um, Very often, they're technology-based founders who are super passionate about what they're doing. They have a vision for what they're doing, and that creates credibility and trust. But they don't really have the skills. They haven't focused on selling as part of their career. So now they're forced into being in front of people selling a product that they believe in and they have a lot of passion for, but they really don't understand the motions of selling, how to understand the needs and how to sell to those needs. That's a big one. And then the second one is that they have one or two salespeople. They're taking up a lot of their time managing, two salespeople instead of focusing on strategy, maybe or raising more funding or trying to, run the company. So they need somebody to help them with that. And then thirdly is they're kind of stuck. They're not getting any sales. The two people that they have in this example just in the founder's eyes, they don't get it. So he's trying to find a way to make sales happen with some team that he doesn't have confidence in.
Interesting. Go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I was gonna say, Tim, when you come into that, so and that's why I said I think it's relevant to any businesses. What are some of the big obstacles that are in front of them when it comes to figuring out their go to market motions? Like, you're looking at email, you're looking at calls, you're looking at personal network, you're looking at messaging, maybe you're A/B testing some things. Like, how do you approach that and then find a place to start?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of one guy that I was working with. It was a technology company in Silicon Valley, and it was for manufacturing. And he had spent time in manufacturing, but didn't know how to sell, kind of what I just described. but he was also a graduate of Stanford Business School. So he had a incredible network of people who were, the target persona buyers of what he was trying to sell. So
Mm-hmm.
he would just call them, and that's how he got his first few customers. The other things that they're trying to figure out is, who do I sell to? Because they're visionaries and they're trying to sell a product that's a visionary product that's doing something unique. So what they miss is that they need to find other visionaries who are willing to buy and take a chance on a brand new product in a brand new company. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really around, what am I going to build? Who's desperate for it? And then how am I going to support it and deploy it? Those are things that they're really trying to think through and trying to find the answers to. And they're testing a bunch of hypotheses
Yeah.
by
And
talking.
what are some of the action steps? What are some of the tactics? Let's get granular. How do they do that?
Well, every one of the founders that I've encountered has a network, and a pretty strong network. So they leverage that, especially in the early stages. Once they've tapped into their network and they've talked to whoever is willing to have a conversation with them, then it becomes more of a ground game, and that is identifying who they want to target, and then starting to do some of the basic outreach. So it's sending emails, it's following up with a phone call, and it's just doing some of the difficult things that you have to do to get connections with new prospects. And so they're not typically like doing that. No one really enjoys cold calling, but that's where they have to go to get started. And that's also where the frustration starts to boil up.
It's a good point from Bob here about
Yeah.
less than 20% of founders come from a sales background, right? They're
Yeah.
or tech founders. They need serious help, even though they're reluctant to accept the help and think they have a good grip on how to sell.
Yeah.
Hey, we built it and they will come. So I'm going to date myself, Tim, but I assume you're familiar with the crossing the chasm model, right? And the
Yes. Mhm.
early market and the early adopters and how that differs from the mainstream environment is in. And basically the premise is, right, there's a handful, or relatively, if you have a bell curve, right, on the left side of the bell curve is your early adopters.
Yeah.
And those are people that are willing to take chances with technology. They're willing to take risks or try something new. Is that something that you have to really work on with your founders or with your clients about, hey, not only the ICP as to who has the problem, but the ICP as to who's willing to actually take a chance and make a purchase of something like this?
Well, I'm a firm believer in Jeffrey Moore as well, Tom. I think and I talked with every one of my founder customers about that, because it's early stage, your first few customers, you can get a friend or someone associated with you from past work to buy your product, but it's who do you sell to next, and that's where the understanding who the visionaries are and who the early adopters are, because they're the ones that are going to be your next target market. And that takes time to find out who they are, and go through that process of qualifying them to see if they are ready to make a decision and take a risk on you as the founder and your product and your company. And that those are the first 10 or 15 customers usually have to be in that visionary early adopter stage. And that probably goes even longer into the first Series A, when you're a little bit more established.
Hey Tim, how do we identify the early adopters? Do you have a magic wand for that?
Yeah, if I did, I'd be writing a book to follow up on Jeffrey Moore. But I think I guess the old adage of you have to kiss a lot of frogs. You have to be out there in the market. You have to talk to people. You have to understand what they're trying to accomplish, and you have to build a relationship with them to understand if they're risk takers. And usually that doesn't take long. You can sort that out in a conversation or two over lunch or dinner, and you'll be able to find somebody who will very easily identify as a early adopter. They're proud of it, and they want you to know that they've done things in their company to differentiate not only themselves but make an impact on the company. So they're ready to tell you who they are if you take the time to ask them.
Hey, Brandon, I think that, from the LinkedIn world, right? To me,
Yeah.
using LinkedIn in that early stage is a great way of attracting potential early adopters
Mm-hmm.
and even aligning the content right in a way that would attract the early adopter. Um, and believe it or not, depending upon even the product you're selling, other social media channels, Facebook and other places, can be a great place to at least kind of lure, right, some of those early adopters.
Yeah. Well, we've had multiple times we've had Brandon Borsening, who's the founder of Seamless AI. We've had him scheduled, and then something's come up last minute. We haven't had him on the show, but if you look at him, what he did with Seamless, he totally engaged LinkedIn and just started going with his phone and just started talking about what they were building and the problems they were having. And then he would talk about, oh, somebody said they would want this as a feature. And what do you all think about it? And he just was one of the first that I saw if kind of crowdsource building a technology and building a community. And now I would imagine, I mean, I haven't followed that close, but I'd imagine they're in like their Series D ish. And I'm not sure if they've hit the billion mark or not, but I would expect that they are.
Yeah, it was kind of guerrilla, right? Guerrilla early adopter marketing, but
Yeah.
using social to be
Yeah.
able to do that.
Yeah. It, and that's what I hear you saying, Tim. Like, I mean, outside of social, you're saying like you gotta these founders and the small team they got to roll up their sleeves and just do what
Yeah.
they need to do. It might be cold calling, it's pounding your network and say who do you know that, and getting introductions, getting the referrals. Like it is the old school guerrilla, and whether you do it offline or
Yeah,
online.
Well,
exactly.
and yeah, go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
I was just going to say, most of these guys have been working the problem for a good part of their career, and they've, as one of the founders that I've worked with said, I found a problem that I fell in love with, and I built a solution around it. So, I mean, there's a lot of passion. So they're going out and talking to everybody. They're giving themselves every opportunity to be exposed to other parts of the environment that they're working in, to find somebody who is willing to take a chance on them. And that I see more of that than I see um, leveraging the tools. It's more of leveraging the network.
So, hey, I think Bob here is reading my mind on what I was going to ask next.
Yeah.
Um, he's talking about the first follower principle, and what the founder doesn't. It's who follows the early adopters that matters. Founders need to focus on them to be successful, and that's one of the things I was going to bring up, Tim. And this is a key part of the whole crossing the chasm model, right? You need to find people, obviously, that are early adopters that are willing to take a chance. Clearly, they need to have a problem or something or an opportunity that you're going to solve for them. But the third is that you want to be able to build references that somebody who is less of an early adopter would find believable, right? Because they're in the same industry, they're in the same whatever, right? Geography, it could be, I mean, there's a number of different criteria. So you want to start building those early adopters to be people that could be references to that next cohort of customers, which are not necessarily going to be as early or as willing to take the chance. And they want to know that somebody else has succeeded with it.
Right, right. Yeah.
And those are your first followers, I think, is the point that Bob's making there.
Yeah, it's a great point.
And Tim, we had talked about whether we were going to bring in product market fit on it, but I think that this really, it's like it's almost seamless right there. Not bring up seamless, but it's almost kind of seamless where you're going into your first followers, your first buyers, and then discovering product market fit. how do teams do that? How do they start figuring this out and find like, yeah, this is the path that we need to take?
Yeah, going back to Jeffrey Moore again, his focus is around finding a beachhead, and the beachhead is a unique capability that you can deliver. That's a differentiator for you in the marketplace. So once you can establish that by understanding the problem that you're trying to solve, and then building a solution around that, and then constantly looking at the product market fit is a value hypothesis of, am I creating enough value that differentiates me and that people are going to want to buy this? And then so that's where it takes more and more opportunity to meet with other people to test your hypothesis of whether or not that value is high enough or big enough for them to make an investment in you. So there's a lot of interaction between identifying your ICP and having product market fit, because if you spend too much time chasing the wrong problem or the wrong customers, you're going to have a hard time reaching product market fit.
Yeah, hard time keeping capital in the bank account.
All right. So at what point, right, when you come in, I assume there's that point where it's time to hire that first salesperson, and the founder. Maybe the founder is either outgrowing the role or the role is outgrowing the founder, depending upon the situation. So how do you know when is the right time? What do you do? How do you go about? And I want to bring up this point, right? You can be catastrophic to hire in that early stage the wrong person, the wrong salesperson. Because what most people do is they hire the wrong person. They take 6 or 12 months to figure it out. They've, to Brandon's point, they've burned a bunch of capital along the way, and there's almost to the point of no return. So I would think hiring that first salesperson, or whether it's a sales leader or an individual contributor, it's got some pretty large ramifications. What do you do? How do you do that? Take us through that.
Sure. Yeah. The first thing is to make that decision of if it's time to hire somebody is, your pipeline is consistently full. You're stretched to the max to cover all the opportunities that you have in your pipeline. At that point, now it's time to really consider giving more time to the other areas that you have as the founder. The other piece that I think, and this is where I would come in to help them, is to really validate that all the key aspects of the business are checked off. And those are, repeatable sales process, that you do have a fit in the marketplace, that you have a differentiated product, and you've sold to at least 10 customers. And then you document that and make sure you have the ICP identified, and your sales motion, the things that you do and have done successfully, and then that allows you to replicate that to someone else.
So you brought up an interesting point I want to hit real quick. You're saying that you should hire when you already have a pipeline, or you have a growing pipeline. I would suspect that a lot of founders would look at it going, man, I must suck at sales, so I've got to bring in somebody who's an expert, and they're going to fill my pipeline or fill our pipeline. Is that a common theme that you get along the way?
Yeah. I mean, given the point earlier from Bob that 20% of founders come from a background of sales, so their focus is not in that area. It's not a comfortable position for them to be in. But if they hire a salesperson too early, that's an even worse decision, because you haven't really proven that you have a sellable product. If you haven't, I think 10 customers is kind of a good number to focus on achieving as the founder. Maybe a few less or a few more, but you have to prove to yourself and to the development team that you're working with that you have a product that's viable and that people want to buy it. And then once you have established that, even if they're friends and family, then you can start to look at, how do I extend that part of me into someone else and replicate what I've done, and maybe even do it better than I've done it.
Yeah, that's such, Tom, to your point too, is I've talked to two founders in the last couple of weeks, and I know other stories too. It was the same thing. It was either the board insisted, the board, a board member had the greatest sales leader ever that we need to hire. And one of them was, we went through about $800,000, brought in the sales leader, they brought in a team. 8 months later, we had nothing, like zero to show for it, except $800,000 lighter. And I've had multiple conversations with that. I mean, this is a big challenge.
Yeah.
Well, the boards usually answer, Brandon, right, to the problem is hire the hired gun, right? Who's going to come in and save the
Right.
day from a sales perspective. And
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever seen that work. I'm not going to say it's never worked, but I've never seen it really work from that perspective.
Yeah, I've seen it where they've hired the wrong person with the wrong skill set for the way that they're selling. That mismatch is a killer, and I think both of you have mentioned that to this point. The other is has anybody worked? Has this person worked in a startup before? Have they worked out of their house? Have they been able? Do they like it? Are they successful with doing that? And those are some basic fundamental questions that if the answer is no to those questions, then you need to find the next person to hire because they're never going to work.
Yeah. Tim, one of the things I think I hear you say too, you're saying, and please clarify for me, is you kind of like the guerrilla stage as long as you possibly can. It's like you start hiring, you bring in the higher guns, whether it's a sales or marketing side. Most of them want to go into the quote tried and true systems. They want to go hire a BDR team that starts making calls, or they want to put in email campaigns and go by list. Is that really what I'm hearing you say? And if so, why do you believe in that, sticking with the guerrilla as long as possible?
I'll give you an example of one company that has been very successful and the approach that they took. Maybe that can answer the question in a different way. This founder was from the industry. He knew the industry. He could get his first 3 to 5 customers pretty easily through his network. But he realized at that point that he was going to need somebody else. So what his plan was to reach out and find somebody that he had working for him in the past as a salesperson. So they knew each other. They didn't have to figure out how to work together. And he knew that this person knew how to sell the product that he was now trying to sell. So they worked hand in hand on every deal. So the salesperson would go out, find the opportunities, get them started, qualify them, and then bring in the founder to do the product sale and talk about the capabilities of the product. And then they grew the business, by adding a few more customers. And then he found somebody who was a really big, well-known person in the industry, brought them on. So now he has 2 salespeople that are operating, but he's still staying involved in every single deal. And that is more of the guerrilla approach that I think has that I've seen work better than anything else up to this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where I'm going to pull in kind of the LinkedIn, YouTube content, social side, sending connection requests and all that. I mean, I think, Tom, to your point, and you brought that up earlier, it is such a great spot to use. It's such a great medium to use because you can publish every day. You can share your journey, and a lot of people, I think you tend to find the early adopters because they start to hear what you're doing and they get intrigued and they start engaging and commenting and following what you're doing. And I think it's just such a natural, easy way to discover those early adopters and be able to stay in that guerrilla stage longer and save money and keep growing your revenues.
Yeah,
So
I think so. And I think Bob made a comment here: is founder ego an impediment? And I think that from time to time it is, but not on a regular basis, Bob. I think they're trying to grow their business and they're looking for ways to do it. and they're looking for people who can help them do the things that they can't do well.
Do a lot of the companies that you work with, or these early stage companies, do they have any form of formal marketing, meaning, a marketing team that's maybe doing either inbound or outbound sort of marketing actions, events, or is that again tend to be handled by the sales organization?
No, there's usually marketing of some sort, one or two people, and
Okay.
they're doing email campaigns. They might have an SDR who's doing outbound cold calling to try to set up appointments for the founder. They're also trying to. They might go to very specific lower cost trade shows and try to get a speaking engagement for the founder. So they're doing things like that to try to generate traffic to the website and also to just set up an appointment with the founder. So it's really appointment setting to gauge someone's interest in pursuing the product that the company's selling.
Brandon, yet again, I think live show, podcast, things like that, perfect for that founder to put themselves in front of the right, potentially the right people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And the one of the main reasons, I mean, whether you go down like a thought leadership route and you're creating videos and post and newsletters and all that, or you go the show route, what I like with the show route is that, and you bring on the right people and have conversations. You're letting people listen. They become the fly on the wall to the right conversation as you're trying to develop a new, whether it's developing the platform, it's determining which features to add next based on how people are using it, what they're finding. It's got the potential to be a very organic conversation that you can share at scale.
And be able to get
I
some
like that.
feedback as well. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, immediate feedback, right? And identify the early adopters or let them self-identify by looking at who's getting involved
exactly.
in the conversation. So Tom, I was going to transition us unless you're ready. I wanted to talk about like at what stage. I mean, I think we talked a lot about staying in that guerrilla stage, staying in that founder stage. It. How do we start to identify what are some of the signs on the wall that it's time to start moving into a playbook?
Um, yeah, I think it's the time when the founder is interested in bringing in somebody, maybe somebody on the sales team, maybe even someone marketing wise, that can help convey the message to a broader audience than the founder alone can do. So I think that's the time when the founder needs to start thinking about how do I take the things that I know and have learned and experienced over the past whatever number of months or years and document it in a way that's easy for somebody new coming on board to be able to pick it up and learn from it. But I think it's the playbook is helpful for the founder as well to be able to be able to put his thoughts and experience on paper, so to speak, or on video, and make sure that he understands what he wants to convey to the next person coming on board.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of art sometimes in founder-led sales
Mhm.
versus science and process
Right.
on that. And this kind of related to Bob's question earlier about founder ego. Do you find do you find that the founder has a hard time sort of replicating or articulating their successful actions in sales and building it into or is that where you come in and help extract all that and kind of figure out how to blueprint it as it goes along?
Yes, Tom. That's really where it's trying to extract the magic and then put it in a bottle that everyone else can use because not everyone's going to sell like the CEO. The CEO is unique. They have the most depth, the most knowledge. They have the most vision of what's happening within the company. So I don't think individuals coming on board are going to have the same CEO level. But what's important is that it's you start the process and you capture the essence of what the CEO is doing and have the consistency and some of the key messaging, and then allow the new salesperson to have some level of autonomy and personalizing the messaging that they're hearing. And it's important that the CEO founder stays really close to that salesperson when they first come on board, and shadow them, be a coach, not a micromanager for them, so that they can learn and take the feedback that will help them grow to be closer to what the founder is like.
What?
Yeah, and they've got to be close at that stage. There's a lot of, I mean, from my experience as a founder and leading sales, there's a lot of intuition, right? There's a lot of gut instinct. There's a lot of like, and they say, well, how did you know to ask that question? I just did. I don't even know how to like explain what the signals were or what the cues were. Like so a lot of that is just kind of that, as you said, mentoring, but not micromanaging, so that some of that osmosis can take place.
Yeah, the founder is unique. He is the most knowledge about what the product is, usually has deep industry knowledge, and understands the problem, or at least thinks that he understands the problem. So he's passionate, he's embroiled in all of that, and so his knowledge is going to be much deeper than somebody coming in new as a salesperson, who, even if they have industry experience, probably doesn't have the same depth that the CEO has.
Do you, as part of what you do, Tim, do you help them identify some, I guess, KPIs or metrics that can identify the health of a pipeline? And what are some of those key metrics that you try and put into place which I assume would incorporate into the playbook, right? Based around accomplishing some of those key indicators.
Right. So it's starting at the beginning of how many leads do we need to turn into sales qualified or marketing qualified leads that turn into sales qualified leads that turn into opportunities that eventually close. So understanding that chain of conversion is really important. So, and that tells you what your close rate is, but it also tells you how many leads do you have to have at the top of the funnel to have the right number come out the bottom that meets your target numbers as a company. So focusing on the pipeline for the salespeople is one area, and my typical and kind of traditional approach is 3x the annual quota of that individual, or whatever the whatever the annual ARR target is for the company, and then working back from there into if I need to close 3 opportunities at $100,000 each, then that means I need X number of leads to fulfill that obligation for new deals. And so it's just doing the math and understanding what that looks like. And then if there's variability in it, then we'll know that, and we can adjust over the course of a couple of months.
I mean, do they usually have that enough data, or do you really just try and put down some benchmarks and then try and evaluate against those benchmarks? Because it seems, they're data poor at this point in their life cycle.
Right. And it's really establishing that as the pattern that they need to track and look at for understanding what the metrics are that are going to drive the business. They generally know, we created X number of leads, but they don't know how they progress through the sales cycle, and really, in many cases, not really sure where the statuses of those are, because there's not a formal CRM in place. There isn't a identified sales process that tells them how far they are into the sales process. So those are the things that I help them put in place, so that it's just structurally how you can manage your marketing and sales process.
Yeah, and for a tech founder, even that concept is a foreign concept, right? So,
Yeah.
Brandon, that's like stuff that we think is just like bread and butter for business operations, but for a tech founder, that can be a very foreign concept.
Yeah.
of having those things that
Yeah.
are there.
Yeah.
They have a
Absolutely.
lot of information, but they don't have a lot of data that they can use to make um, decisions on. So they're kind of making decisions on the fly or with partial information, and so that's partly of what's going into testing the hypothesis, and the ability to track that and keep up with that is it's difficult because they don't have the systems to do it.
All right. Well, go ahead, Brad.
In what they're, I was gonna say, and what they're looking for. I mean, in my second company, I would say in the earliest stages, it was all founder led sales because I was the only salesperson, and I was doing as quick as I mean, I was in like, hey, how quickly can I learn if the market is not going to be a good fit for us, and how quickly can I learn if this is going to be a good market for us? And I actually stumbled upon a market that I wasn't expecting and got really embraced. And so I took it to the next meeting and then the next meeting, and all of a sudden it came, 5 years and 18 million in revenue. It was probably about 85% of our revenue, and it wasn't even a market I was expecting to be in. And I share that because what I'm hearing you say, I mean, for everybody listening, like what you do with companies is like you're trying to build a jigsaw puzzle, but you don't even know if you have all the right pieces. Some of the pieces might be missing. Like you're going in like a doctor and trying to figure out what's wrong and how
Yeah,
to
and,
fix it.
and similar in that analogy is let's try this, let's put this in place, run with that for a month and see if we can find enough new data that gives us direction and guidance on were we correct, then let's do more of that. If we weren't correct, then let's pivot and find a different way to attack the problem. So there is a lot of testing to see what's working and what's not working, and once you find something that's working, you double down on it and go real hard on that particular process.
Mhm.
And it, usually there are some standards that most software startup companies follow, and so it's trying those, and a high percentage of the time that does work. It's getting them to adopt it. That's more of the challenge because they think in their head this is how I should be doing it. When I help them see that there's a different way to do it, there's some pushback on that because of they've gotten comfortable doing it a certain way, and that's particularly true when it comes to product demos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, product demos, that's a whole nother episode that we need to do at some
Well, and
point.
I've been on a few product demos with some vendors this week or last week, and some early stage companies, and they all want to show you the kitchen sink, right? They want to show you every nook and cranny,
Mhm.
and you're like, wait a minute, I just really care about this over here, and they want to show everything off. So yeah, there's a real strategy to the
But
right demo.
and I've got to the point, if I'm on a demo, especially with an early stage company, I ask oh, are you the founder? Yeah. What's your role in the company? And if they say they're the developer, I, I'm I take control of the demo because I know I'm going to spend an hour and
Yeah,
never get
yeah,
my questions answered. Not because they want to be like, oh my gosh, look at, I built this over here and I built this and this is really
Yeah.
neat. If you click that, it does this and do that. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there going, it's to your point, Tom. I just wanted to know if,
Yeah.
if
yeah.
you did this.
And please
That's all I
explain
wanted
it
to
in
know.
English that I can understand. Right. So,
Yeah, for
all right.
sure.
So as we wrap up, Tim, I want to ask you, hey, if you're a founder, I'm a founder. I've gotten 10 sales or so under my belt, or even Brandon, to your point, I'm in a new part of a company or I'm releasing a new product or whatever. What are the three do's and what are the three don'ts that you would give advice to anybody in that position as far as taking the next step?
Ooh, good
Yeah, I feel
question,
bad
Tom.
because I
Yeah.
don't think this was on our question list, but
We didn't prep
I
it.
think
That's a good
Tim can
question.
Going
handle it.
rando.
Yeah, I think Tim.
I think Tim can handle it too.
The three things in particular as a founder or as a founder hiring a salesperson.
No,
What?
just a founder, just where when you kind of, you see somebody or there is a founder that's gotten to those 10 sales or so. They've gotten some early adopters. They haven't brought anybody in. They haven't brought anybody like you in. What are the three things that you would probably say, hey, here's things that you should really do, and here's maybe three things that you should avoid?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, I think it's the number one is you got to get new sales. So however you can do that, whatever way you can do that, whatever creative bone you have in your body to do that, that's number one. You got to get sales. Now, number two is don't be afraid to ask for help. And as you're
Right.
networking with people that you might be talking to about your product, if you're struggling in an area, ask them if they know people who are um, that might be helpful in that particular area. So if you need help in marketing, do you know anybody who's freelancing marketing that I can talk to? So I think that's also one area. Um, the last area is just be truthful with yourself and journey journal your journey. What's been working, what hasn't been working, how am I feeling, what's not, what should I be working on that I'm not working on, and keep a journal that you can kind of look back on and see how you're progressing. The not do's are don't change too quickly. Um, there's a I think you have to spend enough time doing your value hypothesis before you make a change. Don't talk to one person, they tell you to do something, and then change the full direction of your product. Take your time, talk to a few people, validate their concerns, and then make a decision. So don't move fast on that. The other, I'm not as good at the knots, but the
You're doing
I think,
great.
what's that?
I said you're doing great. These are great answers.
The other thing is, take full responsibility for your company and your product. Don't blame your development team if the product's not selling. They're doing what you tell them to do. So take responsibility for your company. You're the leader. And then lastly, I would say make sure you document what you're doing so that you have the basis of a playbook before you need it, and you're not scrambling at the last minute to try to build something. And at that point, you're probably not going to do your best work. So if you're tracking those processes as you're developing and growing, you're going to find it easier to build a playbook when you need it.
Awesome. No, that's a great answer. And I really like the one that you said about don't be afraid to ask for help. Right. I think that's critical. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
done that one. Failed at that one.
And I also think it's kind of a hybrid, right, of chasing shiny objects and just thinking that you need to change all the time. And you haven't given the chance to the thing that you're working on to know if it actually could work or not. Just because it doesn't work in day one doesn't mean that you should change the next day. I think those are two critical ones.
That's a great one. Shiny objects and lots of zeros in a potential product sale.
Yeah.
Those are two dangers that that can really distract you.
And they're hard. I mean, I can speak to, I know my wiring. I mean, I'm a pure startup guy, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on the day, how I look at it. But I know my wiring. I'm like visionary pioneer. And so I've always looked at it and said, like, the Peter Senji's book, and you guys know it, is the fifth discipline, the art of the learning organization. And I always feel like in early stages we iterate really, really, really quickly, but the art slash science slash gut intuition slash luck is, when do you know to take it from being here to start going a little bit slower with your rotations of your learning? Because each rotation is like, we implement, we assess, we learn, we make a decision, we re-implement, and you do that really, really fast. But if you don't take time to slow it down and let that cycle go a little bit longer, so you're making better assessment decisions, you just stay stuck in this phase and you never get out of it. And I've done that
Well,
one
and
before
let's
too.
face it, right? As founders and as visionaries, we can get bored with the longer cycles, and
Mm-hmm.
we like the excitement of that change and something
Yeah.
new. Like I've never been guilty of that, but I know people that have been guilty of stuff
Heard
like
stories
that.
Uh-huh.
about people.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and sometimes I think, I mean, to kind of defend us a little bit, Tim, I'm curious what you'd say about it. It's not so much that you get bored; you're just going like, this isn't working because it's not
right.
working fast enough, and your strength, which can be your weakness, is to innovate. Like, okay, what do we do
Yeah.
differently? What do we do differently? And so it comes from a positive place. It doesn't even have to be, oh, I'm bored, let me just go create something. It's like I'm trying to solve a problem, but at the same time, I haven't allowed what we're doing to really take root, and then I uproot it by creating
Yeah,
something
there's a
new.
level of impatience that I find universally with all founders. They want something to happen fast, and
Yeah.
that's where you guys are just talking about. They're iterating and they're innovating because that's all they think about. So if it's something doesn't happen within 10 minutes of making a decision, okay, that's not working, so let's do something else. Where it's just I like the analogy you say, take root,
10
give
minutes.
it a chance to grow, water it, and give it some sunshine before you pull it up.
Things don't germinate, blossom, bloom, and come to full fruition in 10 minutes. Come on. I can see it. It's right there. How come
Yeah,
you
Where are
can't
the
see it?
people? Why aren't they lined up? So, all right.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, you know what my biggest takeaway from today is going to be, Tom, and it's totally selfish. Sorry, audience. This one's very, very selfish for me. I think there is a great opportunity for what we do with Fist Bump in the startup world. Something is, especially with a little bit of funding behind them, like, hey, here's a 1 year program to go take your leader through content and turn them into somebody influential in the industry and feed the pipeline. Like, let's take advantage of the leader's personal brand to fill the
Yeah,
top of the
totally
funnel.
agree. And even in funded startups right now, there's so much emphasis on efficiency, right, and how you're using that capital.
Mhm.
And there's certainly a lot of ways to blow capital in an early stage company, but I think, Brandon, that's a very efficient way to do two things: attract that early adopter, attract some of your early customers, but also start to build the brand and build that know, like, trust, right, which an early stage company has to be able to do.
Mhm.
They can have credit. A lot of companies aren't going to buy from somebody they don't know, like, or trust. So it gives them that head start, if you will.
Yeah,
All right,
for
Tim, if
sure.
somebody wants to learn more about what you do and are interested in maybe some of your services, where would they go?
My company is called Shamrock GTM. So have a LinkedIn page, or you can reach me at Tim at shamrockgtm.com. And phone number is 404-435-4098.
I think you're the first person that's given a phone number.
You're a,
Yeah.
you're a brave man. You're a brave man throwing your phone number out there in the internets. Whew.
All right.
I've had to turn off at least 5 different spam calls on my phone just while
Yeah.
we were recording today.
Well, I like talking to people and trying to help them get to the next step. So I'm open to taking a call.
All right. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Appreciate the
sounds good.
insights. Brandon, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I think the thing that I would say in summary is just what I said at the beginning. It's whether you're a startup or you're an existing company. I mean, I think right now is the time. Like we talked, I think last week about ICPs, and I think every company should be considering reviewing their ideal customer profile. They should be reviewing their value proposition. They should be reviewing their messaging. And it's not so much that maybe you've changed, but your industry has definitely changed. The way your competitors are communicating with your buyers has totally changed. And this, I mean, we've got in the last 5 years, you've got remote work, which has changed time that people have on their hands. Buyers that were working from home, they actually might have more time to be spending time on LinkedIn or doing a little bit more research. And then you threw in this little tool. What do they call that thing? Oh yeah, AI. They threw in this little AI tool in there, and all of a sudden messaging has changed dramatically. So this just felt really similar to what we've talked about over the last few weeks with ideal customer profile and value proposition. This is your go to market, and everything we talked about today, I think, is very relevant for a startup to an existing company, or even, as you said, like a new product launch. But the reality is everything has just changed so much that these foundational pieces, I think it would just behoove us to spend some time on it.
I think we just even, for myself that's living this every day, just kind of reviewing them and getting some of those points, I think was very helpful. So appreciate it,
Yeah.
Tim.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again. Thanks everybody for the comments and for joining us. I'll take Carson's role, or do you, unless you want to do it, Brandon?
No, I'm going to let you do it, but I'll tell everybody, hey, next week, I think it's going to be a great episode. I won't be here, but Tom is going to interview Carson, I believe, on his new book, The Show Must Go On. And I think that'll be great, whether you're from smaller business to enterprise. I mean, Carson's noggin is a wealth of information and insights, and
there is so much data in that book. I need to take that book, drop it into AI, and condense all the key points. There is a lot of data in that book, but we're going to try and unpack it a little bit and hit some of the key points next week. So we'll miss you, Brandon, but the show will go on.
The show will go on. Look at that, the way that worked out. Tim, thank you so much.
Pleasure,
really
guys.
appreciate it.
Have a good day.